looking at identifying some of those problems that end up on our board and reallocating the people who previously didn't have the capacity to work on those problems. And so I think for us, it's mostly just looking at, how can we be more strategic about the organization's overall goals? Some of them are going to be well suited for automation, and some of them are well suited for that capacity we freed up because of the automation.
Okay. Maybe let's take that even just a little bit further. What's the value of speed or time when you're looking at automation in this?
I'm going to speak to a personal example that just happened this morning. We took a few weeks longer than we should have to get a quote out the door, and we were informed that another vendor's been selected on an opportunity here. And I think that speaks very clearly to a direct line between cost and speed. If we had done that, executed that faster, we would have had the business. And I think it's just there's lots of little places on that 1,000 cuts where, these opportunity cost of not being able to do higher value work, the hidden opportunity cost of your customer experience not being in line with their expectations, and simple things like having notifications or quote templates can speed that up.
Perfect example, and it's one that hits home as a professional management firm like ours as well. We can certainly see the impact of slow business development decisions on having someone else steal the market from you. So painful example, and sorry to hear that, but a really good one about the speed of decisions and how to improve getting into a new market or advancing a new relationship with a customer simply because you don't have all those extra touch points, right?
Yeah, and I would say the one thing that we can do with automation is make your business run faster and smoother. The one thing we can't do is all the parts that you still have to do, make sure you do them too. And I think that's part of where the automation, Microsoft chose the word co-pilot well, I think. It's a partner in crime. It's helping you do all this work, but it is still not able to make all those decisions and do all the work on its own.
Just before we leave the topic of diagnostics, I don't want you to give away your black box, but from our working relationship, I understand that when you typically operate with a client, you do so with an open book and you engage different groups for their insights. And you said that you, with your experience, often come in with a very intuitive first look at the organization to sort of know where the opportunities are likely to lie. Can you walk through just a typical approach, even a generic one, about how you would get in, conduct a diagnostic, start to finish?
Yeah, so I think as management consultants, we're often brought to engage with the senior leadership of an organization. I tend to start our kickoff engagement with the senior leadership and the stakeholders to understand the goals, but I actually would prefer to get the boots on the ground opinions kind of first and look at a lot more of the operational resources and what they're doing. I find that finance and HR tend to be two of the biggest departments who are huge proponents of the automation that we do. They have a lot of movement of data that are approval notifications and simple tracking of something in a status. And so those are great little opportunities to kind of move to this process. And then we look at some goals top down as well to understand what kind of drivers they're looking for. And I mean, management will have some priorities. We want to do our best to follow those, but I often find that some of the best opportunities for time savings or improvement come from the operational team instead. They have some of the biggest problems that management might not be aware of the way that they're doing things and how that can be open for improvement. And then just on the note of the metrics there and measuring this, one common example is we build a lot of SharePoint intranets as well as a internal company web portal, and we want to understand how much more we got people using it. So we want to snap usage diagnostics before and after our project so we can understand how much more we've got the usage there. We also do similar thing with our forms. There's 500 paper forms submitted a year. Now there's 1,000 digital ones. It's faster and they're higher quality. We try to measure a lot of our work as well so that we can reflect on it. And then when I say something like, I have a customer who we've unlocked 127% of the money they've given us, we can quantify it very clearly.
Oh, very good. Very good. And as you start to get into the how do we actually design the work, I'm excited that you've got a bit of a live demo, as I understand, to share with us today. So Maybe before we jump into that, maybe can you sketch out sort of what a typical design of a project would look like and what kinds of tools do you use? Maybe just set the contextual stage for the audience here.
Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, when we're doing some of our workshops, we have a little bit of a script we want to follow so that we're consistent with some of the questions we're asking and the goals that we have. And then we also want to be very collaborative in bringing feedback from the business as well and understanding some of their points as we go through a workshop. We will probably pull up a diagramming tool. We definitely prefer Microsoft Visio or a whiteboarding tool like Miro, but oftentimes if our organizations don't have access to licenses, we might use something simple like draw.io, which is a great freeware open source drawing tool. And we'll drop a couple diagrams. We might do an entity relationship diagram, which will be a list of all the tables, but that's pretty deep into the design and more of a data nerd like myself kind of scenario. We will often draw something up like a swim line diagram that kind of shows how the data's moving between people and departments, what kind of notifications or decisions might be there. Identifying where a workflow branches and what happens in certain scenarios is really important to do a mapping exercise on all those parts. And I think that's probably one of the hardest pieces is understanding and doing in a workshop, understanding what some of those edge cases will be. If a document is approved, then what? If it's this type, it goes this way. If it's a different type, it goes to a different person. But diagramming that all out instead of these little hand gestures definitely make it a little bit easier in a workshop, either on a whiteboard or in some shared software like Miro, Microsoft Visio, or Draw.io.
We see this a lot, and I know this is a big barrier for organizations getting started with this kind of work and the philosophy around automation. But when you move through the earlier part of our discussion around diagnostics, where you're starting with just a big open question or canvas of where do we begin, to getting into the simple diagramming tools. One of the things that I really appreciate about Bauer Automate and the way that you guys do your work on this is you're able to get laser focused on simple design with the diagramming. So you're able to manage the complexity of where do we start, how do we triage, how do we prioritize the work. This is probably a good segue into the actual demonstration if you wanted to show us a little bit more. But I think for those that are watching this webinar and video footage, I think what you're going to see as Riley goes full speed through this demonstration is it's just so simple. And you probably think to yourself, how could I do that? Or how do we get started on something like that? So I do know that knowledge transfer is also a big part of what Riley and his team do, but just pay attention to how simple this can get to be able to drive towards changes to the bottom line. This is going to be pretty cool.